We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Tuesday. We're in for a busy week this week, as I've talked about before. A lot of things culminating this week, and we're going to have a chance to talk about that. The good fortune of having a guest on the program, a gentleman that's been on before, and he's on again today. His name is Dan, and he's from Michigan. Um, Dan's a little different kind of guest than we've normally had. He claims to be a Republican. I've heard him explain himself many times, and
Not, not,
well, I told you you weren't a Republican.
not in.
Not anymore.
Yeah,
You
I,
you
I,
you've
I'm.
tore up the card.
I prefer to look at myself. I prefer to look at myself as more of an independent
Okay, that's better. At least we've been able
because,
to convert you a little bit.
well, it's just that you know, back when I first, uh,
Well, you were a Republican when Republicans were normal, relatively speaking.
yeah,
Since they went to
yeah,
the dumpster fire, you've kind of bailed on them, and I get it, man. I get it.
you know, it's, you know, I what they believe now just isn't right. You know,
Right.
I've had to, my biological father is what they would call a post-op transsexual.
Your biological father is a
And so,
post-op transsexual. Is that what you're
yes,
saying? Oh, okay. I had no idea. You had
yeah.
mentioned that before.
And so I, I, I've, uh, I've, I'm,
How's your re-
I'm big on huh?
how's your relationship with your father, your biological father?
You know what? He wants nothing to do with me.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
his choice. He
Yeah.
wants nothing to do with his whole life.
No, I get that.
I
I get
haven't
that.
seen him since I was 5 years old.
Since you were five?
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
that
Well,
was the last time I saw him. He wore a dress for me. My mother said that was the last time. Um,
okay. Well, but what you're saying is because of that connection with your father, you've always had support for the LGBTQ. Is that what you're suggesting?
that's right.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how people don't have support for LGBTQ, people of color. I mean, the bottom line, we're talking about aesthetics, we're talking about the outside, we're all people at the core. And
My
if you,
niece just came out.
okay, was that a shock
You
to the
know,
family?
um, my sister said she understood. My niece is only uh 15.
Okay.
Um, you know, I, I, I support either way, you know. Um, my mother says she does because she loves her, but I think she doesn't understand, you know.
Well, I think a lot of people that are
Uh,
heterosexual and happen to be older, that's the one thing, that's the one thing they will say, I just don't understand it. And that's fair enough. You know, in the era they grew up in, it wasn't as prevalent. I shouldn't say it isn't as prevalent. It wasn't as open. I don't think there's any were any less people in the LGBTQ back in the 50s and 60s. The problem was it was fucking illegal. So you'd get yourself in trouble. You'd go to jail if you let anybody know. So now people have the right, and rightfully so, the opportunity to come out of the closet. And all the people that come out of the 50s and 60s, they can't relate to it because it's totally the opposite of what they were taught in the 50s and 60s when it was okay to marginalize those folks or make fun of those folks.
you know, I used to be pro-life. I'm not running that way. I'm pro-choice.
Right. Okay. You were pro life and now you're pro choice.
That's exactly right.
What made you change?
I'll tell you what made me change is the fact that a, a woman has the right to do what she wants with her body, and she has to live with those consequences. We don't have the right to tell her what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, um, it's not our place to tell a woman what to do.
True. Have you heard Old Soul on the show? When she's been on the show, have you heard her?
I've caught glimpses of her. I haven't seen a full length version of her, but I've seen glimpses of her.
Well, she's a wonderful woman and she does a lot of good for women and abortion rights and such. But if you ever change your mind to go back to pro life, let me put you on the show with Old Soul. She'll straighten your shit out real quick.
No, I don't I don't think I'll go back to full life. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I
Well,
just
well, well, see, that's what that's what I was getting at last time when we were talking. You kept saying you were Republican, but everything you said was totally the opposite of what Republicans believe now. Um, I mean, their beliefs are so far off the normal Republicans of the 80s and 90s. I don't suggest that they're even Republicans anymore. I don't know what you'd call them, MAGA or Trump Republican or what, but they're not Republicans. They have no semblance or any resemblance to Republicans when we knew Republicans to be Republicans. I didn't like them back then either, but now, Jesus Christ.
no, I'm not. No, I just got my presidential election thing, and they asked me what they need to put on my ballot. They need to put something on my ballot for the election. What
Are you talking about a
party,
primary ballot?
political party?
Are you talking about
Yeah,
a primary ballot? Yeah, okay.
yeah, primary. They need to put what prime. So I said, well, put Democrat. That's the
Okay.
best thing they could put for me.
Or
They
you
said
could,
it has to be Republican, Democrat. So I
or you
said, well, I guess Democrat.
well, you could put Republican and done something to shoot Donnie Trump down. Vote against Donald Trump under the Republican side because this only sets up the 2024 general election. You can really go any way you want. Let me ask you this. You live in Michigan. There is a primary that's going to come up. Um, what's primary season like in Michigan? Are people really into it, or is it just kind of something that comes in and passes and people vote and a lot of people don't vote? Is there a lot of enthusiasm for the primary in Michigan?
To be honest, I don't know. I get absentee, so I don't know what it's like.
Okay.
Um, I've always gone absentee because it's very hard for me to go out in Michigan, especially during this time, because usually it snows.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it's hard for me to walk on that stupid snow.
Now you brought up
I
something
have
before.
enough trouble. I have enough trouble walking, you know.
Okay. You brought up something before we started the show that you thought was funny. We are seeing the decline of Donald Trump. He's coming up with the weirdest shit he's talking about. He's going off on tangents. You really can't understand a word he says. I mean, he'll suggest that Joe Biden can put together two sentences, but frankly, that's Donald's trouble. He can't put together two sentences. Anything he says or does makes no sense. but he really stretched it this past week where he said that, people think I look like Elvis Presley. Do you think I look like Elvis Presley? And then he posted a picture of one half of his face and one half of Elvis's face. How do you feel about that, Dan?
Yeah, maybe the fat, sweaty Elvis.
I suggested that he may have looked like Elvis at that moment in time where Elvis fell over frontwards in the bathroom, convulsed, and died. Donnie maybe looks a little,
Yeah, I saw that one.
there might be some similarities
I
there,
saw
but
that one.
I also explained that I've always been a big Elvis fan, and ever since I was a little kid, and him trying to compare himself to Elvis, well, that's too fucking far. Elvis is sacrosanct. It's sacrilegious to say anybody's like Elvis because nobody's like fucking Elvis. And Donald Trump is the opposite of anybody good. Um, what do you think about the way he's coming off now in the rallies and in his true social post? Are you sensing the decline I'm sensing with Donald Trump?
I, I I think Trump is losing it. I think he's losing his mind, but I thought he was always losing his mind.
Yeah.
I think it's getting worse. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, it's never going to get better. Let me ask you this. Do you think he'll be the nominee for the Republican Party? Do you think he'll make it to that point? I don't think he will. I think mentally or physically or something else will take him out of the mix. But everybody else says, oh no, he's going to be the nominee. I just disagree. What do you think about that?
I, you know what? There are too many stupid people to think about that. I mean, I think he will make it because there are just too many idiots in the world
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it, he's going to
who
be
don't
78. He's going to be,
bother.
go ahead.
Nowadays, it doesn't, everyone says, oh, Joe Biden's too old. Well, what about Donald Trump?
Yeah. Donald Trump is maybe a couple of years
But
younger than,
apparently, it doesn't, it's just, you know, uh, it's the hypocrisy.
well, Donald Trump is a couple years younger than Joe Biden, but emotionally, mentally, and physically, he's quite a bit older than Joe Biden. Joe Biden, he's slow and he has his points and he has his issues, but they aren't anywhere near what Donald Trump is dealing with right now. And we're seeing the decline. And as I've said before, he's going to be 78 years old on in November of 2024. But up until that time, over the next 10 months or so, he's going to have more pressure, more stress, more trouble hanging over his head than almost any human ever. He's not going to be healthy in the first place. And then he's going to have all this pressure, and not even Superman Donald Trump can survive that.
Well, no, because and you gotta and his supposed wife, Melania, can't even stand his ass.
Yeah. Yeah. And where the hell is his wife? I mean, nobody knows where she is. She's maybe not even in the country. And if I was Melania, I want to separate myself as far as I could from Donald for two reasons. Because he's a pariah, and that when he goes down and goes to jail, she doesn't want to be part of that. But more importantly than that, the motherfucker stinks. And who wants to be standing next to
Yeah,
somebody who
no.
consistently shits his pants?
I mean, it's ridiculous. He's an embarrassment to this country.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, he's been an embarrassment since day one, and it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten worse. Now, there's a lot of people who are freaking out
His
about
father was an embarrassment too,
what's that?
but he wasn't running for anything.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of people freaking out right now because some of these court cases appear to be being delayed. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. That's a normal tactic for Donald Trump. He'll take any reason to try to delay things. But everything he's delayed up to this point has always come to fruition, and all he's done is delay the inevitable. This whole issue of the 14th Amendment, uh, where the Supreme Court is going to hear arguments regarding the Colorado Supreme Court taking him off the ballot. Now, that argument, you'll be listening to this podcast on Wednesday, so that argument is going to happen tomorrow in Washington, D.C., in front of the Supreme Court. So, because the Supreme Court knows that time is of the essence, I suspect we'll get an answer to that fairly shortly after the arguments tomorrow. I don't know how shortly. I doubt a day, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, but pretty quickly thereafter. What do you think about that 14th Amendment thing? I've always kind of been wishy washy about it. I'm not sure if that's going to work or not, but it sounds like a lot of people, a lot of qualified people have made amicus briefs to the Supreme Court. So they've got a lot of people supporting taking Donnie off the ballot. What do you think is going to happen with that?
Oh, you knew that was going to happen. You
Yeah.
knew that he, people were going to fight this, that
Yeah.
people wanted him gone.
Yeah.
You know, Trump brought this on himself.
Right.
If he had just stayed quiet and played golf in his country club home, none of this shit would have been going down right now. And he wouldn't have to be dealing with all these lawsuits.
Yeah.
But
I
he
think,
had to be the man and run for president. No one wants you in the White House again, dude. Get it to your head.
right. I've said that from the beginning. If Donald Trump kept his mouth shut, just did an average job when he first got in as president, he wouldn't be going through nearly these problems. He may not have gotten reelected, but he would not be risking 700 years in jail. Do you think, what do you think the Supreme Court will do with that 14th Amendment thing? Do you think they'll take him off the ballot, or will they find some way to keep him on?
You know what? If the Supreme Court has any, pardon my French, balls, they'll take his ass off the ballot
Yeah, I mean,
because he's already made it clear that he wants to be America's dictator. And the
right.
dictator has no reason for a judge. It has no reason for a Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court likes its power.
Yeah, Supreme Court likes the power, and if you've got a dictator, he will overrule the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court won't be so supreme anymore. Absolutely, uh, that's absolutely true. And I think if the Supreme Court is thinking, they will see this opportunity as to be able to take Donald Trump out of the equation, which would help them and help the country and help the people in this country. The other part of it too is everybody on the Supreme Court likes to call themselves originalists regarding the Constitution, and when I say originalist, I mean that they take everything literally from the Constitution, and if they are truly originalist, they do have to take them off the ballot because it's very clear in the 14th Amendment, the third section. Um, it's just a matter of whether the Supreme Court has the courage to go up against and push back against Donald Trump, and that's the unknown here. We don't know if they have that ability.
Since most of them gave him his job,
Right,
that's the problem.
three of them got hired by Donald Trump. But here's the thing: they have lifetime jobs. Um, Even if Donald Trump became president, he really couldn't run them out of there. So they really got nothing to lose to just go by virtue of the law as opposed to being fearful and bowing to Donald Trump. I hope that's the case. But the bottom line is that that argument's taking place tomorrow at the Supreme Court. So we may be seeing some action that on that sometime shortly. So that's good to know. At least that's coming to fruition.
I hope, I really hope they take his ass off the ballot.
It would take a lot of strain off a lot of people. I get a lot of people writing me very upset, very nervous, not getting any sleep and not eating because they're worried that Donald Trump will run for president again. And if at this point the Supreme Court just to take him out of the mix, that would be the best thing for this country. It would cause people to relax a little bit more. Um, and
But
hopefully that
that's only
hopefully
one
that's the
state.
case.
I mean,
Yeah, it's only one.
that's only one state.
Yeah, it's only one
You
state.
would need swing states.
Well, yeah,
You
but
would
see,
need swing states like Michigan.
but see, the thing is that once that precedent has been set by the Supreme Court, then all the a bunch of other states will fall in line like dominoes because the Supreme Courts in the respected states or the secretaries of states in the respected states will be able to make the decision, and there'll be no way to appeal it because the Supreme Court will have already made their decision.
And, then we can get the swing states like Michigan and Pennsylvania
Yeah,
to to
if they take them off the ballot in Colorado, it's not a real big deal in terms of the election because they wouldn't vote for Donald Trump anyway. But Michigan is a swing state. Your state is a swing state. If we can get Michigan to take them off the ballot and maybe one other swing state, then mathematically he'd be out of the race if no one else took him off the ballot.
exactly. Even Arizona would be one hell of a blow.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be places like Florida and Texas. They may or may not ever be able to do that. But you get enough swing states and just make it so that there's no way mathematically he can win. That's all it's really going to take. But in realistic terms, if the Supreme Court says take him off the ballot, you're going to see a lot of states follow suit. And very quickly, it'll become untenable for Donald Trump to run for president. And not only he will have to see that, but the Republican Party has to see it
The
too.
unfortunate thing is he won't see it because he's so butt ass blind about everything.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I
You
mean,
lie to yourself enough times, you start believing in the lies yourself.
well, I talked about this on the podcast one time before. He went through this E. Jean Carroll thing. Was he lost a case to the tune of $83 million. He was in a press conference the next day, and somebody asked him if he was going to use his campaign funds to pay the $83 million. And he looked him square in the eye and says, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" He said, "I won that case. I won it on appeal." So the question is, does he really believe he won, or is it just his weak attempt to gaslight people in hopes that somebody will believe it? I mean, we all saw it on TV. There's no way he won, but he still keeps saying it. I just don't know if he's delusional enough to actually believe that, or he's just flailing and trying to gaslight people in order to hopefully change the narrative.
And it just makes me sick sometimes with him.
Yeah, he's got some issues, and I think they're going to get worse as the pressure gets applied more. Now,
But the thing is, he he's bringing those issues to the table and making other people believe his issues.
yeah, but I think there's fewer and fewer people believing it. When you talk to people and he makes those claims, and people will say he believes people believe him, I think they really believe that there's like 50% of the country that believes Donald Trump, and that's just not the case. It's maybe 25 to 30%. And that's a lot of people, but it's certainly not enough to win an election. So I think the vast majority of people know who Donald Trump is and know what an idiot and what a what a danger he is to this country. So I don't really worry about it too much. He can yap all he wants. He just continues to embarrass himself.
He can embarrass himself, but um, uh, uh, when I was embarrassed, it's not the fact that he never showed up at the presidential election debates.
Right.
What was embarrassing was the fact those candidates couldn't talk about anything else.
Right. Well, what do you think about Nikki Haley? Do you think, Nikki Haley hasn't been able to beat Donald Trump, probably will never beat Donald Trump? I get the impression that she's just waiting around for Trump to keel over or drop out. That's the only hope she can possibly have of becoming the nominee.
I was hoping Chris Christie would have uh,
Would have stayed
gone
in.
the distance. Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
but well, yeah, let me say something. Everybody who's dropped out of the race said they suspended their campaign. And I think the reason they say suspended their campaign, because if Donald Trump drops out or is forced out or dies or whatever, you'll see those motherfuckers jumping back in at the last minute trying to grab uh, meat off the carcass of Donald Trump. I don't, if Donald Trump does drop out, I don't think we've heard the last of any of these fuckers. And I don't think Nikki Haley has enough support to really garner a decent competition against Joe Biden in November.
you know what? If I thought a woman could be president, I would vote for her. I just don't think Nikki Haley could do it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in her because as much as she's trying to make herself look normal. And up against Donald Trump, that's not hard to do. But she is big pro-lifer. She stood with Donald Trump. She supported Donald Trump. She said she would pardon Donald Trump. Nikki Haley from the outside looks good, but on the inside, she's as dark and fucking uh, corrupt as any other fucking Republican. I just I feel comfortable though, because whether it be Nikki Haley or Donald Trump, I don't think any of those people that were ever on that dais could beat Joe Biden under any circumstances. I just don't see any of them having the kind of support to beat Joe Biden at this point.
So, I mean, when I was a Republican, my mindset was so narrow-minded.
Yeah.
I completely had to change my way of thinking literally
Well, it's a good idea that you did
before.
because if you thought like a Republican, if you thought like a Republican now, you'd have to change because you'd been pretty fucked up if that's the way you thought. I mean, these people are fucking horrible. So I'm glad you did make that change. Well, somebody who was more bent to the Republican Party now calls yourself an independent. What's your thoughts on Joe Biden thus far? What do you like? What do you don't like?
I I still like I don't think he's done that great of a job, but I don't dislike his beliefs either. I think
Well, when you say you don't like he or think he's done that good a job, where do you think he's fallen short? I mean, in terms of bills, he's been one of the most productive presidents in history. He's passed more um, serious bills that help the people and help the country than almost any president, while in the process of being obstructed by the Republican Party. So not only did he get some things done, he did it with a lot of pushback from the Republicans. I've always wanted to ask somebody this. What is it you don't like about Joe Biden? And I'm asking seriously. I mean, there's some things I don't like about Joe Biden, and I can explain them. But what is it that you don't like?
well, it's I don't know much about Joe Biden to give you a definite answer about that question.
You don't like him because you
So
were a
you have
Republican and you want me to tell you what I don't like about Joe Biden? I'll tell you what I don't like about Joe Biden. I still think he should be president in November. I still will vote for Joe Biden. I think he's, for the times and given the circumstances, he's too centrist. He's too much in the center. And he needs to go further left in order to embrace what's going on here. We got to go a little left to bring us back from the ditch on the right side. I think he's too old school. He's very sharp when it comes to dealing with Mike Johnson and Kevin McCarthy and stuff. He's shown that, but I think he's too old school. And we've got a few generations of young people coming up, and he just doesn't represent them, the mindset that we need at this
I'll,
stage of the game.
I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like the fact that now I don't know how he feels about this, but I'm for alternative energy. And um I I'm big on climate change.
Okay.
And so I believe that we need to do more about that. And I haven't seen that with him.
Well, yeah, no,
Now, I could be wrong.
well, you're wrong. The thing is,
And I said I could be wrong.
you're right. The thing is,
I said I could be wrong.
he is pretty strong when it comes to climate change. He's a believer in climate change. He has tried to do things. You know, that's one thing that Republicans will say. Well, why hasn't Joe done anything about this? Like, for example, the taxes. Donald Trump fucked us over in terms of the tax cuts because all our taxes are going up every year now, and the rich people get to keep their tax breaks. And the Republicans will always say, well, why hasn't Joe done something about it? Well, the fact of the matter is, whether we're talking about climate change or taxes or anything else, Joe doesn't have a magic wand to change everything at once. He needs help from Congress. And unfortunately, the Republicans in Congress are satisfied in doing nothing, being obstructionist. So it's unfair to uh, say that he hasn't done anything. And actually, in this in one of the last bills he did, there were some unprecedented things done with climate change. So he's done as much as he can, but he needs some help from Congress. And the fucking Republicans aren't helping anybody, including themselves.
No, that I agree with that. The Republicans haven't done anything for the last decade.
50 years almost. I mean, if you go back in time and try to see what they've accomplished and how they've left the economy each time they've left office, it's not good. You know, every time the Republicans leave the office, back to George H.W. Bush, um, the economy's shot. And then the Democrats come in, build it back up. Republicans come back and say, oh, they're bad with the economy. And then the Republicans get back in and they fuck it up again. There's not been one president since George H.W. Bush and maybe even Reagan. Reagan had a good period where the economy got better. But after him, it kind of was up and down. And it was really down until you got to Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton is, you know, as slimy as he is in certain respects, he brought the economy back. And one of the reasons he was able to bring the economy back, and he's the only president to to balance the budget, uh, is because he raised taxes on rich people. And then, of course, the Republican tells us, "Oh no, that's bad. It's better if we give them a break because then it'll trickle down." Well, that's never worked, and it's never going to work. So, whoever gets into office in 2024, we need to start the trend back to taxing everybody their fair share. Nobody gets a free ride, and that especially means the wealthy and the corporations, because that will change the world. That will make everything different. and we can actually do the things we need, whether it be Medicare, Social Security, climate change, whatever. We need money to do that, and you can only take so much money out of you and me. We've only got so much money, so you got to go find another honey hole, and that happens to be the fucking billionaires who don't pay taxes.
Yeah, that I agree with you, but
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to be changed, and I tell you what, Dan, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back and we got plenty of other shit to talk about. So hang with us here. We will take a quick break and we will be right back.
okay. All right.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have listener Dan with us. He's in Michigan talking about all things Donald Trump, Republicans, and the fact that we're all waiting with bated breath for some of these things to drop. Judge Engeron coming out with his decision to what he's going to charge Donald Trump for his massive fraud. We're hearing anywhere from $370 million on up. And he delayed his decision for a few reasons, legitimate reasons. But I suspect at some point this week he'll make that announcement. And that will be a game changer, I think, for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, you can fuck with him politically, you can call him names, you can do anything you want to him. But Dan, when you take away all his money, his property, his power, his image, if you will, I think that's the one thing that knocks Donald Trump down and makes him almost useless anymore, not only to the Republican Party, but to himself. What are your thoughts about his future money problems that are imminent?
Well, Donald Trump is what we call a con man. He will always find a way to con people out of money.
You think he'll still be able to grift money? I mean, we're looking at it now, and not only Donald Trump, but the Republican Party are having a tougher time getting money. In 2016, the Republican Party at this point had, or the Republican National Committee had $21 million. They right now have $8 million. There are Republican parties in states that are going bankrupt, and Donald Trump isn't bringing in as much money. I think people make the mistake and think that his fans have an unlimited amount of money and they will constantly give him whatever he needs. That's not happening now. He's struggling now, and there is going to be a bottom to this money pit that he's been going to every time. And I think it's starting to slow down now. And that's going to be a problem for him. If that goes away, he's really got no way to source any money.
Back in the 50s, there were traveling con men that went from town to town selling
Snake oil.
snake oil, exactly. And that's what Donald Trump reminds me of.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I tend to agree. He's certainly a snake oil salesman. But my point is that with all the criminal charges and all the investigations and all that, I think the loss of his wealth, the loss of his power, the loss of his properties may be the most damaging thing to Donald Trump. Maybe the one thing that brings Donald Trump down faster than even criminal charges. And it's basically because that's his whole image. I'm rich, I have property, I have power. You take that away from him, and there's no way to bullshit his way through or no way to grift more money. he's got a fucking problem.
To be honest, I really don't know. I mean, he doesn't have, he no longer has his dad here being on the mouth, so,
Right.
um, I don't know.
Well, we keep hearing from the polls, and the polls say that Donald Trump leads Joe Biden. And I think
Oh,
polls,
I don't believe the polls. I don't
no,
believe, I think the polls are wrong.
no, I agree with you. I think they are wrong. And there's part of those polls that they don't talk about. The polls also ask the question, what happens if Donald Trump gets convicted of one crime? And then the support shifts, and half of the people that would vote for Donald Trump will now vote for Joe Biden just by virtue of one conviction. And he's going to get a conviction. I know people are worried about Washington, D.C., because they think it's going to be delayed. It's not going to be delayed that much. We're waiting for the appellate court to come up with a finding on the absolute immunity. He's not going to get immunity. But what people have to understand, if the Washington, D.C. case drops out of March and doesn't start up till April, then the Manhattan District case with Stormy Daniels and the fraud that he committed there, that will start in the earlier part of March. It's scheduled for the 26th. They'll move it up to mid or early March because there's a window there. There's so many court cases, they're going to grab the windows when they can. And whether he's convicted in the Manhattan District, in DC, in Georgia, or Florida, it does not make a difference. You get one or two convictions. This party for Donald Trump is all fucking done.
Well, stories. I don't know how anyone, some of that could, he must have paid her a shitload of money because some of that could be attracted to someone who looked like a fucking gargoyle.
Are you talking about Alina Habba?
No, I'm talking about Stormy Daniels.
Oh, Stormy Daniels. Yeah. Well, you know, she was a porn star and that was part of her business. So, you know, you have to deal with the good and the bad to make the money. It's like having a regular job. You may not like your job, you may not like your boss, but you need that money. So she was just doing her job. Um,
I mean, he must have paid her a shitload of money.
yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, based on what we know about Donald Trump, I would have to think uh, anybody that would Don to have sex with Don, uh, I would have to think there'd got to be a requirement for anybody to have sex with Don, including his wife. Say, Don, could you take a shower first? Because you smell like shit, you dumb fuck. Can you imagine have a foul personality being a corrupt criminal, lying, pathological lying piece of shit, and just to top it off, you smell horribly. I mean, here's a guy
No,
that doesn't, you know, if he was in school, if he was in grade school, he'd get beat up. So, do you think that are you worried at all about these delays that we're seeing in some of the court cases? Do you think it's going to cause any major problems leading up to the election in November?
I hope not. I hope that everything gets settled before then.
Well, everything won't get settled before then, but we only need a couple of things to come to pass. A couple of convictions,
Mm.
one conviction. That's all we need. And there's so many things going on that it's going to be impossible for him not to catch a conviction before the election. It'll be interesting to see how the Republicans respond. The polls say they will go away from Donald Trump if he's convicted. But we've heard a lot about Republicans. It'll be also interesting to see what Donald Trump does because he tends to lose his shit figuratively and literally when he gets pushed in a corner. And a conviction and ultimate jail time is going to really put him in a corner. And then that's when I think we'll see the more panicked, the more frenzied Donald Trump. And I would say that could be dangerous, but I think he's kind of lost any credibility at this point. So now he'll just look foolish.
Well, technically, the lawyers who are defending him lost their credibility as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, not only lost credibility, they lost their licenses or were sanctioned. Any kind of reputation they have is out the window. For the life of me, I can't understand why these lawyers would represent Donald Trump and then let him direct them to do what he wants them to do when Donald Trump doesn't know fuck all about the law. They really put themselves in a bad space. And if you want to talk about somebody who better gotten paid pretty well, it should be those lawyers because they may have to retire from the business of law after they get done representing Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump's not known for paying bills, so I hope they got paid up front.
Well, I think that was the case with these lawyers. I think they had to be paid up front, otherwise they wouldn't work for him. He had a lot of trouble toward the end there getting anybody to work for him, even with money up front. Now he's alleged to have fired Alina Baba, and he's got to get uh, a new legal team going into the appeal. But he's got so many problems there. He's got 30 days to come up with $83 million dollars in cash or a bond, put that up to ask for the appeal. Then he's got to try to find lawyers that will represent him, and they're few and far between. And then he's got to come up with the money up front to pay them. I have a feeling he just may not be able to appeal the $83 million thing. He may not have the cash to do it. And that's when things start getting liquidated from his portfolio of properties.
You know, if I recall, O.J. Simpson had what they called his dream team,
Yeah.
but he never fired any of them,
Well, because they were good.
and
They
they
got
got
him
rid
off.
of.
Donald Trump wishes he could, here's O.J. Simpson going actually killing somebody, and this team, this dream team, got him off. Donald Trump would pray for something like that, but instead he's got the bottom of the barrel lawyers that can't do fucking anything and do nothing but make it worse for Donald Trump. I mean, that's the thing. These lawyers have done the opposite of what they're supposed to do. So Donald Trump is waiting to find out if the appellate court is going to give him absolute immunity. And I know people are anxious because they assume they would have an answer by now, and I do too. There is a certain amount of concern about how long it's taking. Um, but when Judge Chutkin basically said, I'm taking this off the calendar, she basically was passively aggressively pushing the appellate court. And that's why I think at some point this week, the appellate court will come up with the answer. It's an easy answer. Nobody has ultimate immunity, including a former president. If that were the case, then Joe Biden could do whatever the fuck he wanted. And I know the Republicans don't want to give him that power. So they're going to turn it down. They'll send it to the Supreme Court. And I think the appellate court is just really trying to set it up so that it's wrapped so tight that all the Supreme Court has to do is say, yeah, that looks good. We don't have to hear it. And I think that's how it's going to play out. And then Judge Chutkin and the DC trial will be back on the docket and, maybe a month delay. But we're talking about a 2 month trial. and that puts us in June to finish it up. Still well in advance of the election, but the media is acting like, oh, the world's falling apart because the DC case has been delayed. And yeah, it maybe has been delayed, but not long enough to do Donald Trump any good.
Oh,
Are you worried about the delays?
no, no, no,
Not at all.
no, not ordinarily.
Is there anything that you are worried about regarding Donald Trump and the election in 2024? Or do you feel pretty confident that things are going to work out the way we want them to?
The only thing I'm concerned about is that he's going to win the nomination and try to be president again and try to become America's dictator.
Yeah, but that's the big fear that everybody has. He wants to be president again and he wants to be a dictator. What if that happens? I'm here to tell you, you and the audience, that's not going to happen. There is literally no way Donald Trump gets elected. I've talked to people before, and people have expressed those fears. And I say the same thing. In 2020, he lost by 7 million votes and a bunch of electoral votes. And since that time, what has he done to improve his situation, get more support, or get more votes? And the answer is he's done nothing between 20 and 24 to improve his position. In fact, he's made it worse. So just based on that, you throw in overthrowing Roe v. Wade and him taking credit for it, no way he can win. No logical person could say he has a chance because he doesn't have a chance.
If he doesn't, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big issue. Um, Now you said to me when we were talking beforehand, and I'm thinking to myself, Dan is in film school and he just finished a semester. And I said, so what do you want to talk about? What do you know about? And he said, well, I haven't been watching too much because I've been in school, and that's admirable. And it sounds like you're doing well in school. He said he got an A recently, so we like that. Um, how is it to have your attention pointed at something that's for you in the future, knowing all of what's going on in the world and having to focus on that? You said initially you were focused on politics 24/7, but now you're focused on your schooling. Do you ever come across things on television or on the internet and you go, "Holy fuck, I didn't know that happened"? Do you run into that kind of thing?
On occasion, like when I was watching your podcast the other day,
Yeah,
uh, I, and I heard you mention that Trump referred to himself as, looking like Elvis Presley.
yeah, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, I just thought that was the funniest thing.
Yeah,
And I looked it up.
and the thing about
Yeah.
it is, I found it coincidental because I did in a TikTok. I said he thinks he looks like Elvis, and I've always thought I look like Liam Helmsley or whatever his name. It's so ridiculous. And the thing is this is what Donald Trump does. He can't keep a thought straight, so he's grasping at anything and everything to make him look good, because it's not about facts or truth or any substance at all. It's all about trying to find a way to make him look good. Now, he recently said something, well, yesterday, he said He said, "Well, when I get back in office, I'm going to put a 60% tariff on China." And I'm thinking, did you not fucking learn a lesson? You put tariffs on China before, and we all ended up paying for it. Now you want to make it higher, so we have to pay more. The guy doesn't have a thought process. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's just trying to grasp at anything to make him look good to the base. But unfortunately, the base isn't big enough to win an election. So he's just pretty much treading water at this point, and he's going nowhere.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah, that's I have to agree with you. He's just saying stuff that's coming into his thoughts process.
Yeah,
You know, whatever coming into his head, he says out of his mouth.
absolutely. We're getting down toward the end of the show, and since we've talked about it before, and you talked about being in school to be a filmmaker, what now you're younger than I am, but what made you decide to go that way and get the schooling to become a filmmaker at this point in your life? What made you decide to do that?
Well, there was a lot of factors. I've always wanted to make movies my entire life.
Right,
And when I was younger, I was in school, but then my kidneys failed,
right,
and I had to drop out, and I I had to move to Michigan because I couldn't live on my own,
okay,
and I had to be around my family at the time. So I fell into a depression, and I got older, and everyone had moved on with their lives.
right,
And then I was watching a TV, I was watching a video, and some 90-year-old lady had just graduated with a master's from a accredited college.
okay. And you thought to yourself, "Hey, I could kick her ass," and then that gave you
Well, I was already in my 40s,
okay,
and you know, I'm thinking, my God, a 90-year-old lady graduated with a master's. Even if I don't do anything with my degree, I want to know that my life accounted for something.
right, right, absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. Is it your intention once you graduate? You said you're going to graduate in the summer of 26, so that's not that far off. Is it your intention to make films or a film?
Well, you know what? To be honest, my intention is to hopefully graduate in 26 and then go on and get a master's degree.
Okay. Okay.
Not in filmmaking, but I like to get a master's degree.
Well, I've got a film idea for
And
you. You could do a film
huh,
about a ornery, uh, older white guy doing a podcast with a bad attitude. That could be entertaining.
but um, like I got to make 3 films before I can get my BA, BS. the BS, Bachelor of Science degree.
What kind of films are you going to make?
I don't know. I gotta make two. I gotta make one documentary film
Okay.
and two uh non-documentaries.
Okay. That's a lot. That's going to be a lot of work. I mean, how do you do that? Because isn't it impossible to do a film with just one person? You're going to have to pull together some kind of crew and some actors and that sort of thing, aren't you? Some talent.
Yeah. Well, there's resources in Michigan. There's a Michigan Film Association here
Okay.
uh, that I've got in contact with, but I don't even start making films until later this year.
Okay. They provide
So
they provide the equipment too. Because I mean,
yeah, yeah,
is it film or do you do it digitally?
digital filmmaking.
Okay. Does that make it easier?
So yeah, I guess so. It's on a Blackmagic camera.
Okay. Okay. Um, the court case should be over by then, so Stormy Daniels may be looking for something to do. You may want to check in with her. She'll have a few bucks, and
It can't be. I can't do pornography films.
you can't do pornography. What the hell kind of school are you going to, for Christ's sake?
Actually, I was thinking about doing my documentary film
Yeah.
on the U.S. Constitution.
Is there going to be any nudity in it? You may want to throw
No.
some nudity into it because that's going to draw an audience. But it would be, when you say you're going to do something on the Constitution, are you inspired by somebody like, I don't know, Ken Burns, who's done all those documentaries on historical things? Has that been an inspiration to you?
Actually, I was thinking more of one of the lines of oh one guy the guy who did 9/11 Fahrenheit 9/11.
Oh, Fahrenheit 9/11, Michael Moore.
Yeah, Michael Moore. That's it.
Yeah. He's done some great documentaries too. He usually shows up in the documentaries and he's kind of goofy. So that might work out well for you. You going to show up in the documentary yourself?
Well, probably not.
Oh,
Um,
come
I
on.
I haven't done on camera stuff since I was younger.
You haven't been on what?
I haven't done on camera since I was younger.
Oh, okay. Well, you're on camera now, dude. You're on camera now and you're on YouTube because
I
we're
know that, but I mean, I have YouTube is nothing compared to being uh on camera. Um, I haven't done background work since I was younger.
you used to do background work on what, like television shows and shit?
Yeah, I was on Seinfeld and Clueless, the TV show.
Really?
Oh
What
yeah,
what did you do on Seinfeld?
I was on that Kenny Rogers episode.
Really?
Yeah,
What did you do in the show?
I was I was a customer in a restaurant,
Oh, okay. That's got to be kind of cool to turn on.
and I was on Fire Down Below.
Really? Does that pay well?
Yeah,
Does that pay well to do that?
actually, yeah. At the time, I got paid $13 an hour.
$13 an hour. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a 90s though, so that's a little better. Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, just to sit in a restaurant and be in the background. I sit in restaurants and in the background all the time. It ends up costing me money, not making money.
And fire down below was no night shoot.
Oh, really?
So I got there, yeah, I got there at like uh 6 p.m. and I didn't leave there until like uh 7 in the morning.
Did you ever hang out with the stars and stuff? Maybe,
I,
80s,
I got
90s.
me Steven Seagal.
Oh, wow. That guy sounds like an asshole, was he?
Believe it or not, he was.
He wasn't or was?
He was.
Yeah.
He's a big womanizer. Uh,
Yeah.
Randy Travis, though, he was the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet.
Randy Travis, the country singer?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, he seems like he'd be all
He
right.
was he was the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet.
Yeah, well, that had to be an interesting thing. Was that what you wanted to do back then? Prior to your illness, did you want to be on TV and as
Uh-huh.
a
I want to act.
really, really?
Yeah. Wasn't really until later that I wanted to direct.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I suppose you could still do it now, couldn't you?
Uh, Acting really doesn't thrill me as much as it used to.
Yeah, I can imagine. You got to be challenged. You got to always be challenged, and actors always do that. They act a little bit and they go, "I really want to direct." And I'm not, I, I don't know anything
Direct,
about movie making, so I
yeah,
don't know what the difference is.
directing to me is more of a,
Art form?
yeah, because I get to control people's lives with directing.
Well, then my wife's a director because she controls my life. So is my granddaughter. She's a director because she controls my life too. Well, we're going to wrap things up here, Dan. I want to thank you for coming by and doing the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and get some insights. I love when listeners come on the show. Um, all you have to do is email me. This is what Dan did. Email me at rationalboomer@gmail.com. Say you want to come on. We'll set it up and you can come on and do the show. I was actually on a podcast earlier. One of our listeners, a woman by the name of Alona, very nice lady. She's starting a podcast, and it's mostly about women in their 60s. But she said she would take a departure and have me on the program. So she's no doubt listening. And Alona, thank you. I had a wonderful time. You're a wonderful lady. And I told her, I said, you should come on the show too. And prior to her podcast being released, I'm hoping she will come on and we'll talk about what she's got going too. It's always interesting to me to find out what listeners are doing, like you, Dan, and the whole filmmaking thing. That's intriguing to me. It's not something I ever imagined I would do, but it is certainly a creative outlet and admirable for making the effort because that's a tough business to get into.
Well, it's not just that. It's everything. It's, just because I want to start out into filmmaking,
Yeah.
it's, I want to get my master's degrees with that, but I don't want to get my master's in filmmaking.
Okay. What do you want the masters in?
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of history.
Yeah, well, that would be a good match for the filmmaking if you're going to do historical stuff like the Constitution. It's strange because I wanted to be a zookeeper and here I am doing a fucking podcast, so I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I never wanted to
So
be a
yeah.
zookeeper. Um, anyway, Dan, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. The folks listening, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.